Hey everyone! So we just got back from our first big family road trip. So today I'm going to talk about what we did that really helped us on the road with keeping Thomas nice and calm for the long ride. So we did a road trip where we went from Calgary to Vancouver to the island, all across the island, and then from the island down to Seattle, and then from Seattle back to Calgary. And it was fantastic. It was great. We got to see so much family that we hadn't seen in years, some since the wedding, some since I'd been like a little girl. And it was just wonderful to get to introduce Thomas to everyone. So that was great. But it was a lot of driving. And so I went in with a plan because the last thing we wanted was to be stuck on the road, especially in mountain passes, with a crying Thomas and not be able to do anything. So the first thing that we did was I sat in the back seat with Thomas. So my son at the time was 3.5 months. So he's very young. He can hold things, but if he drops them, he can't get them on back by himself or anything. And so I sat in the back seat so I could help him. So if he started to cry, I was able to check. Was it because he was hungry? Was it because he was wet or had a dirty diaper? Did he just lose his blanket or a toy that he was playing with and couldn't get it? What I could kind of manage what was going on. And so that was the first thing that made a huge difference in our trip, was me sitting in the back. Me and my husband were still able to talk and chat the entire time. I was just able to manage Thomas. So that really helped. I had pre-pumped before I left as well, and so I had a little cooler. I used the Mandela pump, and so I had the little cooler thing, and so I had 4 bottles in there, and we had with us a car bottle warmer up to warm the bottle up, and I used that. I only needed to use that once on the way out, where there wasn't another rest stop for quite a few kilometers, and we weren't going to be able to pull over, and he was hungry and he wanted to be fed then. So it took about 15 minutes, put it in, and I was able to feed him, and that was just amazing and lifesaver right there. So that's my second tip. Yes, sit in the back and have a way to be able to feed him, just in case you can't stop. The next thing that was extremely helpful was something that my husband at first didn't actually want us to bring. We were packing the car, and of course, you gotta have the playpen for him to sleep in, and then his clothes, and then our stuff, and we got to this tote bag that I have filled with his books and toys for him. My husband looked at it and went, "Do you really need all of that? Like, I don't think we need that. We could probably just leave it here." And I said, "No, we're bringing it. We're going to need it." And sure enough, about halfway through the trip, he thanked me for bringing all this. So this was another lifesaver. There were some things in here we didn't use that I didn't find that helpful, that I wouldn't probably bring again. One thing I had brought was, for example, this pillow that we do tummy time on to let him get up and be off the floor. And I felt so bad, but we did tummy time, I think, 2 times in the whole week while we were gone. We didn't have time or the space, and we were always at someone else's place, and there were pets and things, so this was like one of the few things that wasn't very useful. The rest of the things in here, though, I used so much. So his toys were so great. I would give him something, he could play with it he would play with it on and off for 20 minutes, get him go to play with his feet, come back, play with it again. This is his favorite toy before the road trip, and so that's why I brought this. But if he got tired of it, I had many other toys, and I basically, anytime he started to get tired of things, I would just pull something else out and let him play with it until he started to get fussy and got tired of it again. And so that was pretty simple, pretty great. So I tried to make sure I had things that were different tactile, things that made different sounds to engage him. Because we were going through the mountains, I made sure, and I had like different teething toys and things that he could suck on to try and help his ears. I brought bubbles, and this was, I guess, maybe the one other thing I never actually used was the bubbles. But yeah, so Another thing that I brought that we use quite a few times is we're starting to go over sign language and so words that he uses. So he has like a toy giraffe he likes to play with. So I've been teaching him the sign giraffe, and he has toy keys. And so we went over these quite a few times, and they kept his attention. And then I brought a ton of books. I brought 12 books when we went. And my husband first questioned me of like, why would you bring so many books? You only need like one or two. Which in theory, yes, could have done with one or two. But I would have been so sick and tired of those 2 books by the end if those were the only 2 books that I had to read over and over it again. And I knew that would have drove my husband crazy as well. So I packed 12 books. Why 12? Because that's the number of books I typically read to him in a day. We usually do 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon before I nap, and 4 in the evening before we went to bed. And the books were so vital. So vital. He would start getting cranky. He was just done with his toys. He wasn't hungry. He was just upset because he had been in the chair for so long. And that is fair, because we were in the car for quite long periods of time. We stopped about every 3 hours and got out and fed and changed and stretched, but we would get back in after between a half hour and hour and continue on. And so there just came a point when he got done, and being able just to pull out a book and read and do that just calmed him right down. And quite a few times put him to sleep. After 3 books, he would just be out sleeping. And so I am so happy that I brought all these books. I'm a little sad I didn't get to keep my story time routine as much as I would have liked throughout our vacation, but the books themselves are amazing. I read at least every book at least twice, if not a few of them a few times more. He definitely has his favorites, even at 3.5 months. And my last thing that I found that helped really well is I sing my son to sleep lullabies every night. And so I have about 8 different lullabies. And so when he just got cranky and the books and everything else wasn't doing it, I sang to him. And it worked. And it was great. And so if you have some songs that you can work up with your child before going on the road trip that they get used to, the moment I started to sing, he would calm right down and look at me. And that was amazing. And it was also great kind of being on the road trip because I learned little things about him I didn't know, like how he loves to like nuzzle his face into things. So I learned that as he was done and I was singing, if I put a blanket right by his face and his lying and just sang 3 songs later, he would be out. So the road trip was kind of cool in that sense, where I got to learn quite a few things about my son. But anyways, things that I've really found that I helped. Just to recap: sitting in the back seat, having some way to feed him, so having bottles pre-pumped and a way to heat them, as well as my bag of toys and tricks of books and things to read and keep him calm and entertained, as well as being able to sing some songs that he really enjoyed. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more videos.